Okay, so had a couple questions come up on the group about how to remove the flywheel and service the points and condenser on really just any Briggs engine. This is pretty standard for most, unless you get into the bigger engines like the I believe the 9, the 14, the 23, and then the 32 if you ever come across one of those, the higher horsepower guys. But most of your Briggs small engines, the points and condenser are underneath the flywheel here. So with that being said, you got to take it off when you need to service it. My issue with this tractor here is I don't have any spark. So yesterday I pulled it all apart and tried to, double check all my stuff. Still don't have any spark. I suspect that the coil's gone bad, but I'm not exactly sure at this point. I've got a couple things I can try to verify that, but first thing you'll need is you'll need a 7/8 socket, or one that fits. Just depends on what engine you have. I think the ends in the Model 6 engines use a 3/4 socket, but you'll need a 7/8. I used an impact to get this off yesterday the first time because it was pretty well stuck, and it took about 3 or 4 minutes of going back and forth on the nut with the impact to get it off. But these are left-hand thread, so make sure that you're going backwards of what you normally would do. So yeah, it's not very tight, but that's all it takes for this one. But some of them you might fight. If you plan on taking it off and you haven't ever taken it off, I suggest use the night before you're going to do it, soak it in some penetrating oil. But anyways, take the nut off, and your starter cup will come off. If you have a recoil start, you'll have the ratchet mechanism, same thing, to the left, it'll come off. But then, and when it comes off, you'll have a starter cup, you'll have a washer. Now this washer is, I dropped that. This washer's concave on one side, so you want it so that it faces out with the concave side facing out, so that as you tighten it down, it works like a spring to maintain the pressure on that flywheel. So that comes off. The next thing you'll need, I don't have it, but you'll need a hammer. This one's loose, but, well, I might need to grab my hammer real quick. But anyways, get your nut started back on here. Go about so far with it, just to where it's about flush with the end of the crankshaft. And what you'll do is you'll take a hammer and you'll smack this. Sometimes it helps to put some pressure and pull the flywheel towards you, and let's strike it. And that'll usually pop it off. It might take 2 or 3 times. Of course, don't get too brutal with it. Be gentle with it. Flywheels are not hard to find, but I mean, you don't want to mess things up. If you mess the end of the crankshaft up, you're rebuilding the engine. And a good crank could be tough to find, just depends on where you live. So let me grab my hammer real quick, and then I'll come back and we'll go from there. Okay, so like so, just like that, and it should pop right off. And then take your nut off. Like so. Sorry if it's a little windy. It's getting breezy here in Idaho. It's part of the springtime fun. So one thing to note is this is the key. Don't use a steel flywheel key, because if it shears, it will toast this and your flywheel, and you will be out of business until you get new parts. Briggs sells these. About any small engine shop should have these sitting on the shelf. This one's pretty well hammered. I don't know if you can really see that, but it's she's been beat up. She's almost sheared a couple of times, it looks like, so I gotta get a new one. But for our purposes today, it should be okay, just to see if we can get spark out of it. But anyways, you'll come to this cover, Briggs even reminds you, do not use steel flywheel keys. Follow instructions. So these are 1/4 inch. So if you have a small socket set, for those guys, for our Canadian friends, I don't know what you guys have up there, but you'll need a 1/4 inch drive socket. The other one that works is if you have a nut driver for like a drill. Usually those are 1/4 inch as well. But anyways, take the 2 screws off of here. Don't lose them, obviously. They both have lock washers on them. And then this cover just depends, might fall off, it might be a little sticky. But inspect it, make sure it's clean. There's a little bit of dirt in here that needs to be cleaned out. But anyways, this is your points and your condenser. Condenser being here, points being here. Your adjustment is right here, 1/4 inch drive. It moves the bottom at the stationary point or contact on here. So if you adjust that, it moves that down, up and down. Just by loosening that, you can move it all over the place. So what you'll need to do is you'll need to rotate the engine over, and you can watch the points close in one spot, like right there. They dip down, so they closed right there, and then they'll open back up. So get them to where they're opened up. You can use a points file like this. AutoZone, most auto parts stores have these on the shelf under a Lyle brand. The guy at the counter probably isn't gonna know what you're talking about, but most of our stores here have them. So you just take this guy, spread the points up, hold the top point down, and just run it back and forth across there. It's basically like a nail file is what it is. It's kind of a pain. It just depends on what you're doing. They're kind of a pain to use sometimes, especially like this where you can't really get in there, clean things up. But make sure they're clean. Next thing is you need to set the gap. So with them in the open position, it should be 20 thousandths per Briggs. So my feeler gauge set's got a 13 and a 7. So that added together makes 20. So whatever you have, if you get desperate, your average like 25-pound printer paper is 3/1000ths of an inch thick. So the appropriate amount of sheets of that will get you in the neighborhood. You'll at least be able to get it running so you can get what you need. But so you loosen this screw and you'll see how that moves. Now you take that, put your stuff in between, and then push down on the top contact, because that'll put the pressure down. The spring over here is putting tension on the up, so that'll hold it like that, and then tighten it up like so. And don't go too tight, because this is pot metal or aluminum and it can't handle a ton of stress. But get it good and snug, pull your feeler gauges out. That should be set. Now with that being said, once again, take your engine and rotate it over, and make sure that when they're closed that they're contacting each other. You want to make sure that that is closing, because it needs to close in order for this system to work. If you need to change condenser, there's a screw over here on this other side. I don't know if you can quite see that, but there's just a little slotted screw. Just take that out. This guy will come off. The wire just wraps around and goes right into here. Just loosen this up, drop it out, and you're good to go. So much other than that, that's pretty much everything there. So there is this red wire that goes right up back here. That red wire goes up into the coil here. So if you do have to change your coil, you have to take this all apart here, take this cover off, loosen this wire up, take your condenser out and fish it back up through, there's a passage up in the back of the plate, and you got to fish it back up through there to get it out. It's kind of a pain, but it is what it is. So as far as that is concerned, that's how to service the bottom end. Now as far as the top end, I'm just going to put this back together for reference so you can understand what I'm doing here. So you've got these 4 1/4-inch drive screws here. Now these are in slotted holes to move this coil pack up and down. So what you'll need to do is get your flywheel all put back on, tighten down, you know, points cover, what have you, back on, and then rotate your flywheel to work away from the magnet so it doesn't suck it down. But the gap between the flywheel and this should be about 12 thousandths roughly. So you can loosen these bolts up, just lift it up, put the appropriate amount of sheets of paper, whatever you have that you know the thickness of. You know, get it to 12 thousandths, 4 sheets of printer paper, stick in there, and then push it down, tighten your bolts up, pull the paper out, and that'll get you where you need to be. The other thing to inspect on these, make sure to be careful with this wire here. If that wire gets broken off right here flush with the top of the coil pack, you're toast. You're just gonna have to buy a new coil pack because there's no way of salvaging that. There's the other wire is on the back side that comes up, the red wire that we just discussed. It comes up on the back side, same thing. Try not to break it off. Here's the coil pack. I do have a parts coil here for reference. This is what some of the newer coils look like. They don't have this tab, which kind of sucks because you can't replace the spark plug wire. I mean you can, but it's kind of a pain. But so this is referred to as a 3-leg armature, and then this is a 2-leg. This one has a 3rd leg, or a 3rd little laminated core in the middle that comes down. These are more or less interchangeable most of the time. It just kind of depends. But if you go to like a new Briggs shop, they're going to give you something that looks like this, but it's going to have a little module on the side, and it'll come with instructions. It'll tell you to cut that red wire, and you can just leave the guts in the bottom because it doesn't use that. They have an electronic ignition one now. It's called a magnetron, but you can just cut the red wire. It bolts on. You have one wire. They work great. All your new lawnmowers use them. Briggs came out with it, I think, in the 70s. Works really good. So other than that, obviously make sure that your spark plug is gapped correctly at 25 thousandths. There's really not much else to this. It's pretty straightforward. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I've got a Briggs manual on PDF, an old one. Well, it's actually a new one Briggs produced for these older engines. I'll post it in the files section as soon as I can. Feel free to read through it. It's a good read. Get you familiar with these old engines. It covers stuff from when Briggs first started building engines in the 20s and 30s all the way up till the late 50s. All these engines got great explanations, great pictures. So yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I hope this helps. I know a lot of you guys are, you know, a lot of your farmers, you have some mechanical aptitude, and it makes it nice to be able to work on your own equipment. I know a lot of people want to replace these with new engines. I don't know. I've got a couple of these engines that start and run just as good as the new ones. It just depends on what you want to do. I can totally understand, the other side of you want something that starts every time and you don't have to, work on this kind of stuff. But I find it fun, so I end up with crap like this. But anyways, Enjoy your day, and I hope this was helpful.